For years, Blake Lively stood at the center of Hollywood royalty, a picture-perfect image of grace, glamour, and untouchable influence. Paparazzi chased her every move, magazines praised her style. Social media adored her curated life with Ryan Reynolds. But behind the glowing headlines and the carefully crafted image, something darker was brewing. Something the public wasn't supposed to see until now. Because in a shocking and fast-unfolding twist, Blake Lively is no longer the beloved starlet everyone once celebrated. She's now the focus of a growing legal firestorm, online backlash, and industry fallout. That's exposing a side of her Hollywood never wanted you to see. We're talking about leaked court filings, silencing creators, and secret power plays that backfired so hard even her closest allies are stepping away. From courtroom drama to influencer subpoenas, from private text leaks to public humiliation. This isn't just a reputation crisis, it's a full-scale collapse of a carefully managed empire. The internet has turned on her, legal experts are sounding the alarm, and the world is finally asking, was it all just a beautifully constructed illusion? This is more than just another celebrity scandal. This is a reckoning. One that Blake Lively never saw coming, one she can no longer escape. So buckle up, because we're diving deep into the unraveling of one of Hollywood's most untouchable figures. The stories you weren't meant to hear, the receipts they hoped would stay buried, and the truth that's finally rising to the surface. This is the story of how Blake Lively went from adored to exposed, and why this time there may be no comeback. For years, Blake Lively was celebrated as one of Hollywood's untouchable stars. From her elegant red carpet appearances to her witty interviews and seemingly perfect marriage to Ryan Reynolds, the public image she cultivated was pristine. But as we've now seen unfold in real time, the cracks have been there all along, waiting silently to rupture. And in a stunning twist, those very cracks have now burst open for the world to see. What we're witnessing is not just a fall from grace, it's a reckoning. And the fallout is sending shockwaves through both Hollywood and the court of public opinion. In recent months, Blake Lively has found herself entangled in a legal battle that has not only damaged her reputation but placed her in the direct line of scrutiny from both critics and former allies alike. It started as a quiet conflict brushed under the rug by PR teams and crisis managers, but that silence didn't last. Because when the truth refuses to be buried, it has a way of resurfacing with a vengeance. And now the headlines are undeniable: accusations, subpoenas, leaked messages, and a mounting sense that the Blake Lively we thought we knew might not have existed at all. What's more compelling is the shift in public sentiment. Gone are the days when Blake's every move was met with uncritical praise. Today, online platforms are flooded with commentary, breakdowns, and eyewitness accounts from insiders who no longer feel compelled to stay silent. The phrase Blake Lively exposed isn't just a trending topic anymore, it's a movement, one that's growing louder, stronger, and impossible to ignore. So how did it all begin? What exactly did Blake do or fail to do that led to this unraveling? Well, let's rewind to the moment where everything changed. It wasn't just one incident, but a series of miscalculations, bold moves, and behind-the-scenes power plays that culminated in her current predicament. It started when her name was pulled into the lawsuit involving Justin Baldoni, a fellow actor-director and now a central figure in a legal case that has stunned even seasoned entertainment lawyers. Blake was never supposed to be in the spotlight of this legal drama. In fact, for a long time, her team worked tirelessly to keep her name out of court documents and press statements. But those efforts failed when Justin Baldoni's legal team made it clear Blake wasn't just a bystander. She was directly involved in communications that could impact the outcome of the entire case. According to court records, several texts and emails allegedly sent by Lively herself became key pieces of evidence. These weren't just casual messages or idle gossip. They reportedly included strategic conversations about how to manage public narrative, silence critics, and coordinate with others to protect her brand. Once the existence of those messages became public knowledge, everything changed. Suddenly, the woman once seen as America's sweetheart was under fire, not just from lawyers, but from her own fans. The media coverage was swift and relentless. Outlets that once lauded her fashion sense and parenting tips were now publishing think pieces questioning her integrity and motives, and it wasn't just tabloids. Mainstream media began dissecting her every move. How did someone with so much influence end up in such a precarious position? Why were so many people coming forward now claiming they'd seen a very different side of Blake? Behind closed doors, insiders started speaking out. Former colleagues hinted at a long-standing pattern of controlling behavior, professional favoritism, and manipulative tactics designed to always keep Blake on top no matter who got hurt along the way. One anonymous executive described her as brilliant but ruthless, claiming she often leveraged her relationships to sway decisions in her favor. Others pointed to a pattern of exclusion and quiet retaliation against anyone who didn't fall in line with her preferred narrative. And while these revelations alone were enough to raise eyebrows, the court developments only added fuel to the fire. One of the most damning moments came when the judge overseeing the case denied Blake's request to keep certain communications sealed. That ruling meant potentially sensitive and reputationally damaging material would be made public, something her legal team had desperately tried to prevent. But the humiliation didn't stop there. In a rare move, the judge openly questioned the credibility of certain arguments made by Blake's attorneys, calling them unsubstantiated and legally unsupported. That moment marked a serious blow not just to her legal position but to her public image. When a judge speaks that plainly, people pay attention. And in the court of public opinion, perception can be more damaging than any verdict. What followed was a media frenzy. Late-night talk shows, podcasts, and TikTok creators began dissecting every legal filing, every court appearance, and every press release. Memes circulated online mocking her attempts to avoid responsibility. Commentators questioned whether her marriage to Ryan Reynolds was as perfect as it seemed, and rumors of growing tensions began swirling like wildfire. And then came the backlash from her peers. In a move that stunned fans, a few notable celebrities who had previously worked with Blake publicly distanced themselves. They issued vague but unmistakable statements about integrity in the industry and choosing not to support toxicity. While none mentioned Blake by name, the timing and context made the targets clear. It was an unmistakable signal that her allies were retreating, and quickly. One of the most surprising reactions came from Taylor Swift, someone long considered to be a close friend of Blake's. In an unexpected twist, Taylor posted a cryptic message on her social media referencing truth coming to light and letting go of people who protect falsehoods. The post sparked immediate speculation and quickly went viral, with fans and commentators linking it directly to the unfolding drama involving Blake. As the online storm grew more intense, so did the legal consequences. Blake's own attempts to control the narrative appeared to backfire. In one particularly dramatic moment, she filed a motion requesting a gag order to prevent further leaks of sensitive information. But that request was swiftly denied, with the court emphasizing the public's right to transparency, especially in a case involving such high-profile figures. It was at this point that Blake's humiliation became complete. Not only had her attempts to control the media backfired, but the very tools she had once used to shape her image, public statements, Instagram posts, curated interviews, now served as reminders of the stark contrast between her polished facade and the reality slowly being revealed. The public wasn't buying it anymore. The humiliation wasn't just emotional, it had financial implications too. Several brand endorsements began quietly pulling back. Projects she had been attached to went on hold, and production companies started reconsidering her involvement in upcoming ventures. One insider at a major streaming platform revealed that Blake's name had been quietly removed from internal casting discussions, citing reputational risk as a major factor. And in perhaps the most symbolic moment of all, Blake canceled a major red carpet appearance at the last minute, citing personal reasons. But insiders revealed a different story: that the event's organizers had expressed concern that her presence would overshadow the event and attract the wrong kind of media attention. This wasn't just a PR crisis, it was a full-blown collapse of a carefully cultivated persona. And the timing couldn't have been worse. As the industry grapples with larger questions about ethics, accountability, and authenticity, Blake's story has become a case study in what happens when fame is used not as a platform for good, but as a shield for manipulation. And while some might argue that every celebrity faces criticism, the situation is far more serious, because it's not just about rumors or online backlash, it's about real consequences in court and in the industry. It's about a pattern of behavior that many say they saw coming, but were too afraid to call out until now, and most importantly, it's about accountability. Blake Lively may have thought she was untouchable, but as we've seen, no one is above the truth, and now that truth is catching up with her, fast, unforgiving, and unfiltered. As the dust settled from the initial wave of court filings, social media leaks, and scathing headlines, something even more seismic began to unfold behind the scenes. What had started as a singular PR disaster for Blake Lively was now spreading into uncharted territory, namely the unraveling of her once unshakable partnership with Ryan Reynolds. Hollywood's favorite power couple suddenly looked far less powerful and much more vulnerable. For over a decade, Blake and Ryan had been viewed as the epitome of modern Hollywood marriage goals. From their charming banter on social media to their glowing red carpet appearances, everything about their image screamed perfect. But when Blake was dragged into a legal battle that threatened to expose not just her professional conduct but personal communications as well, the narrative shifted, and fast. It didn't take long before whispers began circulating in the entertainment industry, whispers about disagreements behind closed doors, stress fractures in their public image, and tension over how to handle the escalating crisis. Sources close to the couple reportedly revealed that Ryan was blindsided by the extent of Blake's legal entanglements and deeply concerned about how this might affect both of their reputations. And here's where things took an even darker turn. According to legal insiders, Blake had allegedly instructed her attorneys to seek protective orders that would not just shield her name but also prevent any of Ryan's communications from being subpoenaed. The fact that such an order was even necessary sparked a wave of speculation. What exactly was being protected, and why did Blake seem so adamant about keeping Ryan insulated from the fallout? That question exploded online when a series of emails allegedly exchanged between Blake's legal team and several third parties suggested that Ryan had been aware of certain backdoor media deals and PR strategies used to suppress negative coverage. While none of the messages directly implicated him in any wrongdoing, the optics were enough to raise eyebrows. What had once been a private family strategy quickly became a public dilemma. The press jumped on the idea that Ryan, long considered the witty, lovable counterpart to Blake's elegance, might have been complicit, or at least aware of how far she had gone to protect her image. Overnight, their carefully constructed brand began to crack. This collapse was no longer just about legal filings or bad optics, it was about trust. Not just the public's trust in Blake, but the trust that held her marriage together under the scrutiny of constant fame. One insider close to the couple shared that the tension was becoming impossible to manage, adding that Blake was spiraling, while Ryan was reportedly distancing himself from the situation, opting to stay out of strategy meetings entirely. But what makes this situation even more shocking is how uncharacteristic it all feels. For years, Blake was known for her poise and control. She rarely made missteps in public, rarely gave interviews that weren't tightly managed, and almost never found herself involved in controversy. Yet here she was cornered, exposed, and forced to respond in ways that only further exposed the limits of her control. In a desperate bid to regain some public favor, Blake issued a carefully worded statement through her representatives. The statement emphasized her respect for the legal process, denied any intentional wrongdoing, and insisted that her communications were taken out of context. But rather than calming the storm, the statement only fanned the flames. Commentators pointed out that she failed to take any real accountability. Others criticized the overly sanitized tone of the message, calling it a textbook example of PR deflection. Even her social media presence, which had long been a carefully curated mix of humor, fashion, and family moments, shifted dramatically. Posts became infrequent, comments were turned off, and when she did appear online, fans noticed a distinct change in tone. The warmth was gone, the charm had faded, and what remained was a woman clearly under pressure, trying and failing to maintain the illusion of control. Meanwhile, the court case continued to evolve at a rapid pace. Justin Baldoni's legal team, sensing an opportunity, began pressing harder. They filed motions to admit more communications into evidence, demanded testimony from key individuals in Blake's professional orbit, and hinted at potential subpoenas for certain media contacts who had previously worked with her team. Legal analysts noted that Blake's team appeared to be on the defensive, scrambling to limit the scope of the investigation. But every time they tried to push back, the court reminded them that transparency was paramount. In one memorable hearing, the judge sharply criticized Blake's lawyers for what he called unreasonable efforts to obscure relevant information. That soundbite was replayed across every entertainment news outlet, and the message was clear. Blake wasn't just losing in the court of public opinion, she was losing ground in court itself. As the narrative spiraled, a wave of industry backlash emerged. Producers, agents, and executives, many of whom had once eagerly aligned themselves with Blake, began pulling away. Projects she had in development were quietly shelved, endorsement deals dried up, invitations to elite Hollywood events stopped arriving, and perhaps most telling of all, her name was suddenly absent from promotional campaigns she had previously headlined. And then came the moment that many described as the ultimate humiliation. A widely circulated leaked video showed Blake arriving at a private industry event, expecting a warm reception. Instead, what she encountered was awkward silence, hesitant greetings, and a noticeable lack of eye contact from other A-listers. The video, just under 30 seconds, showed her attempting to pose for a group photo, only to be subtly edged out of the frame. That clip went viral instantly, and the symbolism couldn't have been clearer. Blake was no longer the star of the show, she was the warning. This marked a devastating turn not just for Blake's career, but for her personal confidence, for someone who had spent years mastering the art of social navigation, public image, and calculated charisma. The sudden rejection from her peers must have been devastating. And while some fans still offered support, the overwhelming consensus was that she had brought much of this upon herself through choices, silence, and actions that were now impossible to ignore. The timing of this implosion couldn't have been worse. With award season approaching and the industry more sensitive than ever to ethical concerns, Blake's presence had become a liability. Award voters, studios, and journalists alike began distancing themselves. In media interviews, even the mention of her name triggered visible discomfort. She had become the elephant in the room, unspoken but impossible to forget. And all the while her opponents continued to gain traction. Justin Baldoni's team smartly leaned into the narrative of accountability. They positioned their argument around the idea of integrity, transparency, and the right to challenge powerful forces without fear, and it resonated. Media coverage shifted in their favor. More people came forward with stories, and Blake's once unshakable grip on the narrative slipped completely from her hands. Perhaps the most symbolic moment of this entire chapter came when a major magazine, once known for placing Blake on their most influential women in Hollywood list, ran a cover story titled "The Fall of a Carefully Constructed Icon." The feature didn't pull punches. It detailed the timeline of events, the behind-the-scenes manipulation, and the dramatic contrast between the public persona and the private reality. In response, Blake's camp attempted damage control yet again, but at this stage the damage was irreversible. The apology tours, the soft interviews, the behind-the-scenes lobbying, it wasn't enough. Not when the public had seen the unfiltered truth, not when trust had already been broken. And perhaps most painful of all for Blake, watching as her once devoted fan base turned skeptical, critical, even angry. The hashtags that once celebrated her style and family life were now flooded with critiques, memes, and demands for accountability. It was no longer a question of bad press, it was a cultural shift. The narrative had changed. And in the new version, Blake Lively was no longer the heroine, she was the cautionary tale. As Blake Lively's reputation continued to unravel in court and in the press, a new and powerful force joined the conversation: the internet. Specifically content creators, journalists, podcasters, and legal commentators, who began digging deeper into the legal filings, public statements, and past interviews. What emerged was a massive decentralized investigation, one that no PR team could control, and no studio executive could silence. It started with a handful of YouTubers and TikTok creators who noticed inconsistencies in Blake's public timeline. How certain events didn't align. How some press statements contradicted what was later uncovered in court. What began as fan speculation quickly became a coordinated, crowdsourced expose. And Blake, who once enjoyed the luxury of shaping the headlines, was now at the mercy of a digital world that wanted answers and receipts. Channels that had once celebrated her red carpet looks and lifestyle tips began releasing hour-long breakdowns of court filings and media strategy. Archived footage resurfaced. Past interviews were reanalyzed, and every whisper of behind-the-scenes manipulation became part of a much larger narrative. The carefully manufactured myth of Blake Lively was unraveling, and no one could stop it. One viral video titled "Hollywood's Illusion: How Blake Lively Controlled Her Image Until It All Fell Apart" amassed millions of views within days. It featured side-by-side comparisons of Blake's media appearances over the years, contrasted with new evidence from the court filings. Viewers were stunned by how subtle the manipulation had been, how effortless she made it all look, until the truth started bleeding through. But it wasn't just fan-driven content that added pressure. Investigative journalists from major outlets began filing formal requests for unsealed documents. In the Baldoni case, a high-profile Vanity Fair piece titled "The Lively Illusion: Fame Strategy and the Collapse of Control" broke down how Blake had used selective access, NDA letters, and internal alliances to shield herself from scrutiny for years. The article was chilling in tone and devastating in impact, and then came the leaks. Suddenly, screenshots of alleged group chats between publicists, stylists, and brand executives started circulating on Reddit and X. These conversations hinted at how aggressively Blake's team had coordinated press coverage, downplayed controversies, and even discouraged outlets from covering negative stories involving her. One message read, "Don't publish, Blake's team will retaliate, not worth the headache." The quote alone became a meme and a turning point. Other creators began interviewing former assistants, anonymous crew members, and people who had worked with Blake on set. Their stories painted a far less glamorous picture, one of cold professionalism, subtle power plays, and a constant obsession with control. No one called her outright cruel, but they didn't call her kind either. The common thread, everything was always about Blake. The scene, the camera, the narrative, she had to be at the center of it all. And while the content flooded every corner of the internet, Blake stayed silent. Her social media accounts remained dormant, her PR team issued no clarifications, and Ryan Reynolds, once known for witty comebacks, had gone completely quiet. The silence only intensified the speculation. It was as if they were retreating behind closed doors, waiting for the storm to pass. But this storm wasn't going away, in fact it was gaining speed. Legal commentators began live streaming court developments, analyzing every motion, every response. One former prosecutor turned legal YouTuber described Blake's legal posture as reactive, not proactive, like someone who assumed the truth would never surface and is now scrambling to contain it. That quote alone circulated widely, plastered on Twitter threads and commentary channels across the web. And then came the subpoenas. It was revealed in newly filed documents that multiple content creators were being targeted by Blake's legal team, not for defamation but for information. Her attorneys were seeking to discover who their sources were. This move was met with immediate backlash. Critics accused her of trying to silence independent journalism. The hashtag Blake targets creators began trending as online personalities spoke out, saying they were being threatened for simply discussing public court documents and offering commentary. One creator posted a tearful video titled "I Got a Subpoena" for talking about Blake Lively, in which they described receiving legal documents demanding private communications server data and IP logs. The video went viral in hours, prompting legal watchdogs and even some civil rights groups to step in. The backlash was swift and intense. Blake's team was accused of intimidation tactics. Even major YouTubers who had never commented on her before began weighing in, calling her actions desperate, unjust, and a dangerous precedent. Blake Lively, the icon, had now become Blake Lively, the warning. The most symbolic moment came when a group of content creators banded together for a live-streamed panel titled "Free Speech vs. Celebrity Power: The Blake Lively Fallout." The 3-hour broadcast featured lawyers, creators, and journalists dissecting the case in real time, drawing tens of thousands of live viewers. Donations poured in to support legal defense funds for creators being targeted. It wasn't just commentary anymore, it was a movement. At the same time, legal experts were beginning to raise red flags about Blake's overall strategy. Rather than focusing on defense or reconciliation, she seemed to be waging a media war on multiple fronts, and it wasn't working. One entertainment lawyer on a podcast described her as being in total defensive mode, arguing that when celebrities go to war with the internet, they rarely win. And Blake is learning that the hard way. And that's exactly what it looked like, a war she couldn't win. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni's team stayed steady. His lawyers continued filing motions, cooperating with creators, and declining to engage in online drama that restraint only made Blake's reaction seem more chaotic. The contrast was clear. One side appeared calm, collected, and confident, the other appeared panicked, overreaching, and unraveling. In a rare twist, even celebrities began voicing their support for Baldoni publicly. Anna Kendrick reposted an old clip of her working with Justin, calling him one of the most principled men in Hollywood. The post was widely interpreted as a subtle swipe at Blake. Other actors followed suit. Quiet endorsements here, liking anti-Blake posts there. In Hollywood, silence is a statement, and many were suddenly silent when Blake's name came up. The effect was chilling. For someone who had once ruled the red carpet, every room suddenly felt colder. Her team tried to pitch new projects, but executives weren't biting. PR firms whispered about risk management. Award shows passed her over for presenting duties. It wasn't just reputation, it was relevance. And in Hollywood, irrelevance is the final exile. But perhaps the most heartbreaking element in all this, how avoidable it might have been. Blake's downfall wasn't triggered by a single event, scandal, or mistake. It was the accumulation of decisions made in secret, truths buried under image, and a refusal to take responsibility when it mattered most. What we're witnessing isn't just a career crisis. It's a collapse of credibility, and in an age where truth moves faster than spin, that collapse is irreversible. What we've just witnessed is more than the unraveling of a celebrity brand. It's the public exposure of a machine that ran unchecked for years. Blake Lively's fall from grace is a stark reminder that even the most polished images, the most charming smiles, and the most calculated PR strategies cannot outpace the truth forever. When power is used to silence, to manipulate, and to protect personal narratives at the cost of others, that power inevitably collapses. In a matter of months, Blake has gone from media darling to the center of a legal and reputational storm she may never fully recover from. And while the headlines might focus on courtrooms and subpoenas, the deeper story is about accountability. about how the internet, the public, and even Hollywood insiders are no longer willing to turn a blind eye. Her silence has spoken volumes. Her legal moves have exposed more than they've protected. And as more people come forward and more receipts surface, it becomes painfully clear. This wasn't just one bad decision, it was a long pattern of control, secrecy, and a refusal to own up. Now the very tools she once used to build her empire are working against her. The media is digging deeper, the audience is asking harder questions, and the illusion has finally shattered. Blake Lively may have once ruled Hollywood's image game, but in today's world, transparency wins. And this time it looks like the truth caught up with her loudly, publicly, and permanently. This isn't just the end of a chapter, it's the beginning of a reckoning, and there's no going back.